This is the Simpit. I'm your host, Sean Cole, and I want to wish all of you out there a very happy new year. I hope that 2015 is a great year for you and for all of sim racing. And with this being my first show of the new year, I want to start things off with a bang, make it something really special, something really important, and so today I'm here to take a very first look at the Accuforce Steering Wheel by Sim Xperience. This product will be available in a matter of weeks and is likely to be the biggest story for all of 2015. I've been following the development of this wheel for a couple of years now, and I've seen plenty of variations prior to this one, the final version. Now with the retail ones actually being assembled as we speak, if I wanted to try one out, it was going to require me going to Ohio and trying them out at the Sim Xperience headquarters. And when there, I would find the Accuforce wheel mounted to a fully running Stage 5 motion simulator with all the bells and whistles that go with it. And there, proudly mounted in plain sight, was that wheel that I'd been dying to turn some laps on. The wheel is a very good looking wheel, with its base resembling something between a high-end piece of audio equipment with its aluminum casing and cooling fins for aesthetic flair, and at the same time, it reeks of being high-end automotive equipment deserving of being in a real race car turning laps at 200 miles per hour. Now before I get down to driving, let's take a good look at this wheel and its parts and see what makes it truly a one-of-a-kind wheel. Starting out with the base, it's made entirely of metal and is a compact solid unit measuring in at a little under 9 inches front to back, 7 inches left to right, and 6 inches tall. It has a robust center shaft and has a single heavy-duty cable coming out from the back that goes to the base unit. It is an elegant design that has a very nice black anodized finish and Sim Xperience logos that give it a real finished look. The front side has the Accuforce quick release system, and under that, a carbon fiber cover for the front. From the quick release out is the wheel, the Accuforce wheel mounting system that starts with a machined aluminum, no wire slip ring quick release. From there we move on to the button and paddle shifter assembly. The paddle shifters are mounted to a metal inner structure with heavy duty springs. The paddles themselves are a heavy duty carbon fiber thick enough to never flex or bow. You can adjust the paddle shifters in several ways, starting with moving them narrower or wider to accommodate different rim shapes and sizes from 280 to 350 millimeters. You can also adjust the amount of distance from the rim front to back for their resting position, and then finally, you can actually adjust the amount of throw until the clicking point. The buttons for the wheel are done with 4 different little mini button boxes, the top 2 having 2 buttons each and the lower 2 having 4, giving us 12 buttons total. These boxes can be mounted in different positions in order to be right where the driver wants them. It also makes it easy to accommodate any other wheel rims that you may use. From my inspection, this is the only area you will find any plastic used, but it is very heavy duty and nicely designed. Also included in the button box portion of the wheel is an additional USB connector and a phone style plug to allow for SLI displays or any other desired mods you might add later. These connections also use the no wire slip ring function of the quick release, meaning that you still have no spinning wires even with an additional phone or display added to the wheel. All of this assembly then allows for any standard 6-bolt automotive wheel to then be mounted, and in the case of the Accuforce Pro model, that means a nicely suede covered red stitched performance wheel with a functional center horn with a nice AF logo in the center that adds a 13th button on the wheel. With the entire wheel mounted to the base, the overall length has now grown to a hair over 15 inches front to back. I want to now focus on the base, or the motor itself. It's a direct drive industry grade motor, and if you dive into this arena, you'll find the world is full of hundreds or even thousands of these types of motors. But over the years of development, the Accuforce motor has been developed with specifications designed around sim racing. This means a motor that is capable of delivering outrageous amount of torque, but doing it quickly and accurately. And most importantly, it is capable of delivering 13 Newton meters of torque all day long. No fall off whatsoever, and that is extremely cool. One thing that makes the Accuforce wheel unique and also achieves lightning fast response time is the single board design that has both the motor drive system and the controller in one piece. This means that the motor is being updated by the board at 50,000 times per second. It then will simultaneously communicate with PC games at 1000 Hz in each direction with its dual stream technology through the Sim Commander software. The Accuforce wheel also features up to 4,500 degrees of rotation and has 16,000 pulses per revolution positional feedback. Now I can tell you those are some pretty impressive specs on paper, at least on the hardware side of things. But when we turn to the software, things change even more. Now the guys behind the Accuforce wheel are the guys behind the Sim Xperience full motion simulators, and they've been dealing with game outputs for many years, long before the wheel project began. The Sim Commander software that drives the wheel is the very same software that drives their full motion simulators, SimVibe, the G-Seat, and also their touchscreen displays. When you combine this piece of hardware with the knowledge and information that is coming from the Sims themselves, you can take things to a whole new level, and that is exactly what they have done at Sim Xperience. With Sim Commander, you get a new level of control over your wheel than any other wheel on the market, period. So let's break down this piece of software that becomes a very important part of the Accuforce wheel. For starters, or for simplicity's sake, it comes with factory settings that you can then adjust based on your gaming environment. It comes with 4 different gaming modes to choose from, each affecting the overall power and performance of the wheel. Those modes are linear performance, peak performance, soft performance, and child mode. Beyond the driving modes, there are an endless amount of settings that you can adjust to affect the wheel's strength, performance, and effects. You can even let the Sim Commander auto-tune the settings for maximum peaks. Just run some laps and the Sim Commander will adjust the wheel for you. You also have the option to run good old-fashioned force feedback provided by the game. When you're running in this mode, you let the game supply the forces just like it does for almost all the other wheels on the market. The other option is to run in the Sim Xperience Enhanced Force Feedback mode. When you run in this mode, throw out those canned effects that are used by almost all those other wheels, and they're now being supplied by the Sim Xperience Sim Commander program, and this is very specific commands from the inputs in the game to the wheel. This setting allows the wheel to use more systems from the car and deliver them right into the wheel simultaneously. Road noise, suspension hits, even the effects of curbs themselves have been tweaked into a much more deeper layered set of forces that immediately feel more realistic and allow for more car control than ever before. And for those who really want to dial things in, you can then add more or less of any of these inputs independently. This means if you want a heavier feeling of engine noise in the wheel, you can turn that up without affecting any other part of the forces delivered to the wheel. Let's just say that you wanted to run with very little or minimal amount of force feedback. For all the other wheels on the market, that means you'd have a wheel that just felt like it was dead in your hands. However, in the case of the Accuforce, you can turn the forces down, you can turn the suspension down and the amount you feel when you're turning the wheel down, and increase things like road noise, road vibration, engine vibration, and things that make the wheel still feel alive despite running low force feedback. The end result being a very light to the touch wheel that an oval alien racer would love, but at the same time have a wheel that felt like it was still tuned into the sim. The options are endless, and the ability to make this wheel duplicate the exact driving experience that you want or expect is always possible. So by now you're probably starting to see that this wheel is very detailed, and I do say like no other wheel on the market today. And that's before we've even gotten down to driving it. So let's go ahead and start talking about what it's like driving the new Accuforce wheel. When I first started driving the wheel, the first thing that I noticed was the solid feeling in the wheel itself. When you grab it, you feel no flex or movement whatsoever. The entire wheel, quick release, and base allow no wiggle, no flex, and no signs of weakness. The rotation of the wheel is extremely smooth and friction-free. My first laps driving the wheel were done in the mode where it allows the game to control the force feedback. This is the equivalent to the same thing that all other wheels use, and it gave me my best comparison between this wheel and others that I have tried out. This means that the Accuforce wheel is reacting to the same outputs of the game that the Logitech, Thrustmaster, or Fanatic wheel would use. Going down the straightaways, you can tell just how precise this wheel is. There's no center wobble or jumping in your hands while going down the straightaways. The wheel has the lowest dead zone of any wheel that I've ever driven, and even the slightest deviation from straight will result in a feeling of resistance from the wheel. I can already tell that the reaction time of this wheel is lightning fast and the precision is very, very fine. Small movements of the wheel can be felt but not cause a major change in line of the car. You can make the smallest of line adjustments with just the slightest bit of pressure from the wheel. On turn-in, you can really start to feel the power of the Accuforce as you are met with very solid and very smooth resistance. You can really feel the car fighting its way into the corner. The wheel's smoothness is still very noticeable despite the strength of the forces. There is no additional friction or binding beyond the power that the wheel wants you to feel. This is when the precision of the wheel starts to come in, allowing you to make very slight adjustments to hit the ideal line. When the car starts to lose some traction and the rear starts to come around, the speed at which the wheel lets you know is awesome. You feel the wheel go light, warning you that things could be getting ugly. It gives you an amazing ability to reduce the steering input and keep the car tracking well. From apex out is a similar but even better experience. Again, you instantly feel any changes in the car's balance through the wheel. And when you come out of a corner too hot and the rear end starts to wiggle, this wheel has an ability to let you drive right out of it with the wheel showing you the way by constantly letting you know what the car is doing. When hitting bumps or curves in the corner, you will find that the wheel gives you a pretty good shot but doesn't change the direction of the wheel much, affecting your ability to hold the line. So at this point, I'm still using the same forces that the game provides to all other wheels on the market. But in this case, the forces were being delivered by an extremely powerful, extremely precise, and extremely quick to deliver its forces wheel than those others, and it was blatantly obvious. Now on this trip to Ohio, I only had about 10 hours to actually drive the wheel, and it might be very easy to overlook certain things while I'm focusing so much energy on what it felt like to drive the wheel. Now I want to focus back on the wheel itself, the buttons, the button box, the shifters, the parts that were selected to make this fine wheel. Now I didn't take the time to move the little button boxes into the perfect positions. However, I can tell you that these are pretty heavy-duty little buttons. They have a very firm and positive click, and they feel good to the touch. The combination of red and black buttons and different configurations top and bottom will aid in the remembering of what each one is mapped to. It was well thought out, and the plastic casing has an elegant shape to it that blends in nicely to the wheel. The paddle shifters, which are made of thick carbon fiber, have a nice curve to them that match the wheel rim's shape nicely. The thickness allows them to be pulled on hard from any position on them with total confidence of a good shift. When the lever is pulled, you have a fair amount of spring tension that is followed by a very strong click that let your fingers know a shift has been made. The release of the shifters is also good, and there is no play or wiggle in their movement. The wheel choice that is used in the Accuforce Pro is an off-the-shelf aftermarket wheel that is suitable for a real car, a street racer's car, or even an amateur track car. It has a very high-end suede grip and a beautiful red stitching going all the way around it. I found the wheel to be suitable and a good choice for any driving situation. I drove tin tops, open wheelers, and did a bunch of oval, and each time this wheel worked out well and was a good choice for overall use. And that takes us to the quick release on the Accuforce wheel, which is a work of art in its own. I can't stress enough how cool and unique this design is. The Accuforce quick release uses a machined aluminum heavy-duty coupler, and you can put the wheel on in any direction and then just spin it around until it locks into its key driving position. The locking mechanism will automatically click down, sending the large bearings into their holes and locking it firmly into place. To remove it, Just pull on the heavy-duty aluminum tabs and the wheel comes off effortlessly and smoothly. There is no binding or weirdness, and it works perfectly each and every time. Very slick, very pro, and all done with no spinning wires inside or out. And now I want to move on to one of my favorite and one of the most anticipated features of the Accuforce wheel, and something that separates it from all the other wheels on the market. Up until now, all of my driving has been done using the standard force feedback, the same generic force feedback that is supplied by the game that is used by all other wheels. And now it was time to experience the Sim Commander and letting it use its enhanced force feedback to drive the wheel. It has been designed to give the driver much more usable feedback than other force feedback methods. When using iRacing, you will see that while in this mode, it actually grays out the iRacing force feedback controls. It is no longer allowing the game to control things. For basic users, this was as easy as changing modes, but to get even more out of iRacing, you can. To start things out, load your favorite car and track, run a few laps to let the software see spikes from the force feedback being delivered to the wheel. Then bring up the Sim Commander overlay screen and you can let it auto-tune your wheel settings. There is no figuring out the clipping or cases of too much force feedback and getting cut off. It is automated with Sim Commander and you are just a few steps away from perfection anytime. At this point, we're allowing Sim Commander to fully control the wheel, and for me, at this point, the wheel has come to life in a way that I have never felt from a steering wheel ever before. It has taken on new meaning, new realism, and it feels just like being in a real race car. Instead of what has always felt like generic or canned force feedback effects all rolled into one signal to my wheel, it now feels like multiple things happening all at once in layers of force feedback information. The wheel now has a totally new momentum feel to it upon turn-in. It is as if I can feel the steering rack turning the wheels, and then the friction of the ground now fighting those wheels from turning. I can practically feel the sway or weight transfer of the car through the wheel. The wheel turns in with resistance at first, and then it seems to get a little momentum behind it as the rest of the car reacts to our new line. The wheel has taken on new life, and it only took me a few laps until I was starting to shatter my previous lap times in the same car and track combination. I no longer felt as though my steering wheel was a request for steering, but felt directly linked into the game. I was able to be much more aggressive and yet harness that aggressiveness with accurate counterforces to the wheel and making the car do exactly what I wanted it to do. Again, the precision of this wheel is always noticeable, and so is the strength and that fine line between very strong without impeding your ability to drive. And it's at this moment that for me or for any other high-end user that the real fun begins. At this point, I can take this setup and I can go to sim, car to car, track to track, and get a very good driving experience. However, let's face it, we all have preconceived notions about how any car or track should feel for us or what any driving experience should be like. For example, when you hit those blue and white or those red and white curves, how violently do you think that should affect the wheel? And that comes without real life experience. These are our notions, and it doesn't matter whether we're right and wrong when it comes to the kind of driving experience that we really want. With Sim Commander, I can take any effect that the game can supply to a motion system or to a steering wheel, and I can turn it all the way up or all the way down and let that effect come through in the wheel. And to me, that's a very special thing when you're talking things like road noise, engine noise, or suspension hits. With Sim Commander, I can increase or decrease each and every effect until I have created that exact feeling that I expect prior to getting into the car or track. For me, this is an incredible freedom that quite honestly can even fix what I think is wrong on a certain sim or car. Am I right? I don't know. Does it matter? I'm not even sure. But if I think that the roar of a 900 horsepower engine should shake my wheel, then I can crank up that engine noise and have exactly that effect. If I think that hitting the curve should create a massive shake in the wheel, then I can have that too. Or let's say that you are running on ovals and you're tired of having the bumps at Daytona shake your wheel, well, you can pretty much take that away without affecting anything else on the wheel. Again, we have entered a new era of wheels and of sim controls. After hours of driving and hours of abusing this wheel, I never felt anything that resembled a wiggle or heard any funny noises coming out of this wheel at any time. And if you ever put your hand on the wheel's base, you would find it sitting there at room temperature regardless of how hard you were running the wheel. The wheel shows no signs of weakness, and I have yet to find its Achilles heel when it comes to something to break or go wrong. So as you can see, I was completely blown away by this wheel. It actually was hard to come home and have to go back to driving on wheels that I have a tremendous amount of respect for, but will never feel the same to me after driving the Accuforce wheel. And I know that people out there are going to ask me to compare it to a V2 or to a T500 wheel, and I have to say, it's not even a fair question to ask. Those wheels go about things in a completely different way, and after driving the Accuforce wheel, as nice as the V2 wheel feels, as much as they've improved its design, it still feels like a toy wheel when compared to the Accuforce. This wheel is smoother, faster, stronger, and heavier duty than them, period. And that's before we even add the power of the Sim Commander software. When I add that to the picture, when I add the tunability per driver, per car, per track, per sim, it makes me think it would be more fair to compare this to what Ferrari has in their F1 simulators. Now, if I think back in time, I've actually driven the Bodner wheel. I've driven the wheel by EC Sim hardware, and people are going to want to know what I think comparing it to those wheels as well. Now, those are also direct drive steering wheels, and to be totally fair, it is hard for me to remember certain things like exact amount of strength or reaction time, so I can't fairly answer that in this show. But they are all perfectly smooth and friction-free and built to last. However, what really lets the Accuforce wheel shine above those others for me is its total package. The Accuforce wheel is beautiful, it's easy to mount, it runs cool to the touch, and it has a very nicely designed quick release system, buttons and paddle shifters all included with the wheel. And that's something that neither the Bodner or the EC Sim hardware wheel have addressed yet. The Accuforce is also quite a bit less expensive than either of those other wheels. In fact, it's nearly half the cost of the Bodner wheel as of today. It also had the most powerful software of any wheel that I've ever tested, and it performed better than any wheel that I've ever driven. Now, I don't usually give a wheel credit for making me faster, but in the case of the Accuforce, I actually saw my lap times dropping rapidly. To be perfectly honest, it almost feels like cheating because it gives you so much more ability to feel the car. So to bring the show to a close, the only thing that I've left out is the price. And the Accuforce wheel is expensive, coming in at $1,749 for the complete wheel. It also includes the Sim Commander software, which gives you sim vibe, as well as the on-screen overlay ability that you may have seen me use on the show in the past. But for me, with the performance of this wheel, with the durability of this wheel, it's worth every penny. That doesn't mean that everyone can afford one, but it's worth the money and something that you're going to want to have if you take your sim racing seriously. And when I think about that price, $1,749, I think, does that even seem expensive to me when I really consider what all you're getting and comparing it to the other wheels both below it and above it on the market today? And I have to tell you, it's very, very much worth the money, or something I think is a reasonable price for what you're getting. When I compare that price to any other hobby that you might pursue, let's take golf for example. If you were going to get a new set of good high-end golf clubs, you're going to easily spend over $2,000 before you even get to a golf bag and goofy clothes and shoes and things like that. And if you were to get into cycling, let's take mountain biking for example, 5-10 grand, you can spend that in a heartbeat when it comes to a good downhill mountain bike. So for $1,749, this is a lot of wheel for the money, but it's an indication to me that our hobby has really grown up. It's gotten to a point where we can start to really expect high-end equipment. It's what us high-end users want to be using, and it's now here for us, and it's going to cause a whole new rush of wheels, I promise you that. These were the kind of wheels that were only available to the super wealthy or to teens who were willing to contract one to be built just for them. And now for $2,000, for under $2,000, we can all have one in our own homes. Now these wheels sold out in their first batch to existing Sim Xperience customers. The new batch, they're going to go on sale January 21st, and those orders are going to be supplied sometime in March. And if you're interested in getting one of these great wheels, head over to simexperience.com and check it out for yourself, and be sure to let them know that the people at the Simpit let you know about this great wheel. Now I hope you've enjoyed this review. This really more of a preview. I wish it could have gone into more detail, but again, I had 10 hours of driving time. I wasn't able to have the wheel here in my studio. So that limits what I can actually do, long-term testing it in more scenarios, but I did give it a good enough shakedown to let you know I can't think of another wheel that I'd rather have on my personal rig. So I hope you've enjoyed this show. If you have any questions, any comments, please head over to thesimpit.com, look up this show, put your comments there, and I'll do my best to answer each and every one of your questions. Happy New Year, have a great 2015. This is the Simpit. I'm Sean Cole, and I'll see you on the track.